All right, we got my guy Justin here. If you would, introduce yourself to the camera.
My name is Justin, aka DJ Low Key, DJ by choice, promoter by default, and do a lot of other random stuff that comes along with that.
So what I like to do with the Creative Questions podcast is interview creative people, creative entrepreneurs, people that have kind of built a life around creativity. Mm-hmm. And so first, I'd like to start with, where are you from initially?
I'm originally from outside of Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
Small town called Noonan.
Uh-huh.
It's about 30 minutes down I-85. But my stepdad was in the military, and I was a bit of a military brat growing up. And that's what brought me to Colorado.
Where?
And Colorado's been, more home than anywhere else.
Sure. When did you start taking a liking to hip hop culture and what that represented?
Whew, man, it's a great question. It was probably, I guess I'd say early 90s, late 80s, probably early 90s.
Where were you at in life? Middle school, elementary?
The first hip hop song I remember hearing, I think, was Rob Bass and Easy Rock, It Takes Two.
Yeah.
Hearing it on probably a rock radio station in Georgia. It was one of the first, maybe not one of the first, but in that early batch of crossover records. I remember being like, oh, what the hell is this? Because it clearly sounded different than everything else that was being played on this top 40 rock station. And that
was my first vinyl record.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
On Profile with the red and black.
Yep.
Yeah, big letters. I know the one.
Yeah.
Every one of those has Q-Burn on the beginning from DJs rocking doubles of it.
Yep.
And so around that same time, and this is funny, but and it's actually really funny because I know you have a lot of New Kids on the Block stuff in here, mm-hmm. but it was right when the New Kids on the Block craze was kind of happening.
Sure.
And so, while they're clearly not a hip hop group, they very much took a page out of that New Edition, New Jack Swing, early hip hop.
They were produced by the guy that found New Edition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's
they had the one song with Flava Flav is on one of their joints.
It felt a certain way.
Yeah. It was just you could feel some of those elements that late 80s, early 90s,
mm-hmm.
New Jack Swing influence. I remember then in MC Hammer, Vanilla Ice, all that corny hip hop is blowing up in the mainstream kind of stuff. Then we moved to Germany. My stepdad got stationed there, and I remember one of my best friends, his big brother was really into music, and I remember he used to make these things called pause style mixtapes, mm-hmm. and they called them Jum tapes, which was Jeff's ultimate mix.
That's dope.
Yeah, and I do remember vividly on one of those there was De La Soul Saturdays. And it was oh wait, what is this? This is different and better than the other hip hop stuff I had been exposed to. And then shortly after that was Dr. Dre, The Chronic, a lot of hip hop influenced R&B TLC, SWV, all that kind of stuff hitting in the early 90s.
Was it always music, or did you take to some of the other components like breakdancing, graffiti?
It was really first and foremost just the music.
Yeah.
We were living in a small military base in Germany at the time, and there just wasn't that much hip hop culture accessible to us outside of just
the music.
The music, and then also this was right before the internet really popped off, and then they had this thing called AFN, the Armed Forces Network, mm-hmm. which is the one channel that kind of the military makes. And they basically rebroadcast other stuff. And I do remember In Living Color being a very, very big influence, because they would often have the performances mm-hmm. At the end of the show. I vividly remember the Diggable Planets one. And it would air, I don't know when it aired in the States, but it would air at 10 p.m. on a Sunday night out there. Mm-hmm. And so we would stay up late, and then on Monday, because all the kids were watching the same one TV channel, mm-hmm. we would all talk about, we would all do dumb impressions of like,
And then
the Wayans brothers or like Jim Carrey or whoever that we liked off the show. And then we would talk about the performances the next day, and that'd be like the buzz of like Monday you'd go back to school and you would be like nerding out on that.
yeah, what are we doing? Yeah.
Yeah. And it would be like, very much like the flavor of the week based on what you saw from In Living Color. And then also Fresh Prince, who, it's weird looking back because like hip hop is so ubiquitous now. But I do think for a lot of folks who maybe like didn't live in a big city or didn't have like, or maybe a little young to have that like direct access to what was going on in hip hop, seeing somebody like Will Smith, like portraying like a very like strong hip hop influence on like a national TV show that like your parents wouldn't trip if they saw you watching was like a very big influence and like
very
kind
impactful.
of, yeah, like helping mainstream hip hop in a way that like wasn't like the scariness of like NWA or like Dr. Dre, The Chronic, or like some of the other big hip hop stuff that like kind of came right before it.
Yeah.
I have some mixed feelings about like how popular in mainstream hip hop is called, hip hop as a culture has gotten over the years. I mean, obviously there's a price that you pay with that.
Yeah.
But like being detached from like a big city life and even an urban life of any sort, it was great to like at least have that kind of accessibility. And then my stepdad got stationed in Colorado Springs, Fort Carson, and then coming to Colorado, there was like a little bit more in the way of like hip hop stuff available. And then that's when I like really got deep in things. That was like high school era, going to like independent records in Colorado Springs. Then
there was a thriving kind of different hip hop scene in the Springs adjacent from Denver that was like guys like Black Pegasus and they were, I think Tef's from out there. It was like its own little hip hop.
Samir from The Reminders. I remember when he used to work at Independent Records. And that was the era of like we would go to like the midnight sales. Like once I got my license, we would like stay out late and like go to the midnight sale to buy like new releases right when they dropped on Monday at midnight. Yeah. Because they technically came out on Tuesday, but they would get to the record store before that, and then at like 12:01 in the morning, you'd be able to purchase it. And so the independent records on Platte would stay open late. And so you would go there, and then you would like see like kind of like the biggest hip hop nerds in town. People that are willing to stay up till midnight just to buy the new release like the second that it came out. Yeah. And you start to see the same faces again and again. And I would say a lot of that was like my first real introduction to like, just like a wider scope of what the hip hop culture was. And then after my freshman year of high school, I got a job working at the Garden of the Gods Trading Post. Okay. Which if you're in Colorado, I think most people know what that is. It's like this Garden of the Gods is this big, crazy, natural, like sandstone rock formation, big touristy thing, very beautiful space. And then they had this thing that was the Trading Post, which is like kind of the adjacent tourist trappy thing where they sell you little knickknacks and keychains and all this other stuff. And there I worked with a guy named Petey, who later became DJ Petey, who is like 5 years older than me. So we were never in high school at the same time, but we did go to the same high school. And we became friends. Then when I got a license, I started visiting him. He went to college in CU Boulder. And in that era, Boulder got all the good hip hop shows, not Denver, which, in 2025, it sounds pretty ludicrous to think of like Boulder being the hip hop mecca of Colorado.
Well, it makes sense because Boulder was such it was like one of the main college hubs in Colorado. And usually colleges kind of break the next trends in music.
True. But also like, Denver is just a much bigger place and more diverse, and it's only 30 minutes up the street to Boulder.
Well, I think Denver struggled with an identity crisis with hip hop because there's always kind of been a thriving gang culture here, and sort of the gang hip hop
totally
caused some strife amongst just hip hop event promoters in general early on.
Yeah.
Like the DJ Quick shit.
You were more likely to have like drama at a hip hop show in Denver than drama at a hip hop show in Boulder. And I think that scared away a lot of the Denver venues. I think Cervantes might have been the venue that started taking more chances and like reintegrating hip hop into like the Denver show scene probably in like the early 2000s. But like throughout the late 90s, early 2000s, like the Fox, particularly in Boulder, was just like smashing.
Crazy stuff. Yeah.
I was actually talking to DJ Ambitious Boy yesterday at My Party Goodness, who is like a generation or two younger, and we were talking about it, and he couldn't believe that like Boulder was the hip hop mecca of Colorado, having seen like the Boulder of like the 2010s, where it's just like EDM everything.
That's kind of, it's Colorado in a sense, right?
Yeah, totally is Colorado.
I agree. Like I remember seeing some of the dopest hip hop shows from the Executioner.
Yeah.
To,
Executioners with Common opening was my first show at the Fox, and it was before I could drive. I was 15, and one of my
were probably at that
older
show
friends.
together.
Yeah, one of my older friends drove me up. Drove like a little squad of us up. I'll never forget that experience.
Mm-hmm.
It was Common, the Executioners, and Rozelle.
That's the one. I was
And it was
definitely there.
unbelievable. Mr. Sinister from the Executioners was Common's DJ, so that was really cool. Common played with like a small band. It was right after the One Day Alone Makes Sense album came out,
Yep.
and like Common was in like peak form.
Yep.
And the Fox Theater is one of the dopest venues that I've, like just one of my all-time favorite venues. It's like a perfect size. Sound is always exceptional
For
up
me,
there.
it's only second to the Ogden.
I like the Ogden, but I
like
don't
the
know.
Ogden because the Ogden can get the dope up and coming band, but it also will attract really big bands.
It is
and
like
you get a
one size
smaller
up.
end
Yeah,
to it.
yeah,
So
totally.
it's like that part is dope. you know?
Yeah. I do like the Ogden a lot. There was just some magic to the Fox and the Hill. and,
especially
like,
during that time.
I was gonna say during that time, like, going to Fatty J's for a slice of pizza after a show. I remember going and seeing like in high school, maybe a year or two after that, going to see like the Roots and Goody Mob, and we were in line for pizza at Fatty J's. This was a place that used to have like dollar slices. And there was like after the show, there'd be like a line like
The
30
dollar slice.
Yeah, thing of the past.
Was it $12 slices
yeah,
now?
something
The
like
fuck?
that. But yeah, I remember being in line and looking behind us, and like 10 spots behind us was like Questlove and Black Thought in line for the same slice of pizza as us, and just being a high school kid, like completely turned out like,
Geeked,
what? You gotta be kidding me. We're in line in front of the Roots? Like,
Yeah.
So those experiences were great. And I do miss that era of Boulder because it is, I think, pretty much long gone.
Yeah.
I jokingly describe Boulder as like white people gentrifying other white people at this point. And
Yeah,
it's
it's-
very much like, lost a lot of the college town charm that it once had.
Yeah, it's a
it's
whole nother thing
Still
now.
beautiful up there. It's a high quality of life, but man.
You go above Boulder now.
Yeah.
You just bypass Boulder and go to the mountains.
Yeah, and like culturally speaking, like Boulder used to be such a cool hub of creativity.
I think what they got going on there now is it's new and it's not quid pro quo to what Boulder was, its trajectory was, with being white people gentrifying white people.
Yeah.
Like them hiring Dion and like that
I
whole
think that-
movement is like kind of it's skewed Boulder a bit, and it's dope.
Yeah.
Like it's dope to see some.
I was
things
happy to
happening.
see all the Dion hoopla and like, as far as I'm concerned, like, Boulder needs to be diversified and like should be like, just more of a melting pot. I mean, I'm a big proponent of diversity
Instead
and
of
like
a money pot.
yeah, and this like, this whole concept of the American dream as like a melting pot, like I like to witness that in person. And, looking back, I don't know that I would go to school I went to college at CU Boulder because of that era of like the Fox and everything. And looking back on it, I don't know that I would do it again. In fact, I kind of like talked one of my friend's daughters out of Boulder. She was like, oh, I want to know how it was to go to school at CU Boulder. And I was like, well, it was pretty cool, but I don't know that I would do it again, and probably not in this era. And it was funny because I was talking to her dad, who's like one of my best friends, and he was like, yeah, like my daughter was like really thankful that we had that talk, but she was also like, man, Justin just shit all over my thoughts of where I want to go to college. But she wanted to go because like they have a good football team, and I'm like, you shouldn't pick where you go to college based on if they're having like a cracking moment for the football team. Like she's I think still like 3 years away from school even, and I'm like, if
more
in
research.
3 years they might not even have a good football team, so you shouldn't plan on that as like the main reason why you're picking a school. But yeah, it was a good time in Boulder in that era. But yeah, we would, when I was in college in Boulder in that era, we would often like frequently come down to Denver, and, ever kind of since that era, like that mid 2000s era, Denver has taken on a kind of a different trajectory. I feel like Boulder's interest in the things that I like has kind of diminished, and Denver's interest in the things I like has like rapidly grown. So, so when I got done with school, I moved down to Denver, and, Denver was home for 18 years, and then I moved to LA for a couple of years, and then recently back
during
here.
the 18 years, like what was that like being in Denver? When did you decide you were going to start DJing? Where did that come into play?
Oh yeah. Well, I started to DJ actually with money that I saved up from my first job in high school. Like working a summer job, I like saved up some money throughout
At
the
the
summer.
Outpost?
Yeah, Garden of the Gods, Trading Post.
Trading Post.
Yeah, close.
Almost had it.
Yeah. I wouldn't expect, it's not particularly memorable. But yeah, all that money I had saved up. And during that same time, I would be getting mixtapes from this guy, PD, that he would, and this is such like a hip hop head of a certain era, he would carry around literally like a JanSport backpack that had like mixtapes. He had like a beat up like Echo catalog back before like Echo had really blown up when it was spelled ECHO, which was like, when it was kind of like an underground thing. And he would sometimes let me borrow mixtapes. One time he let me borrow this mixtape that was a Chones mixtape. And that was my introduction to DJ Chones, who was like a very big inspiration for me early on. It was this mixtape called Chones 97 that I can like vividly remember like every little piece of that mixtape. I like wore it out so much.
Yeah.
And I used to be the kid who would like have the Walkman on, like nonstop, like in between classes in school. You know, they give out those like goofy awards, those like tongue-in-cheek kind of jokey awards at the end of a school year.
And that was you.
One year I won one of those. It was like, this one is for the kid who's always got something with them at all times that they're never separate from. And they're like, Justin and his Walkman. Because even though there would only be that like 10-minute passing period, it was like, oh, let me like pop in the new blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And like, you know, as much of a social person as I am, I still preferred to like get 10 minutes of the fix of whatever, you know, I bought at the midnight sale on the Tuesday.
Yeah.
You know, you would buy the CD, but then, or even the vinyl, and then you would like instantly like dub it to cassette tape for portability. So yeah, anyways, after my first summer job, I like saved up some money. I bought like one of those very shitty like DJ in a box kits, which had like
a Newmark jump off or something?
it was worse than that. It was Linear Tech,
wow,
which is a company that most people have never heard of. I would say even amongst like the professional DJ community, probably like 95% of DJs have never heard of this company.
In my mind, it went like, you know, Tex, and then Staten, and then Newmark, and then Gemini.
Yeah.
And then Linear Tech.
Yeah, Linear Tech is very much at the bottom of the pile.
Underneath Gemini.
Totally.
Yeah.
In fact, I did get at one point a hand-me-down mixer that Chones, it was a Gemini Scratchmaster mixer that Chones had gifted a different friend of mine, this dude named Kevin. Shouts to Kevy Kev, it's been a long time. And he gifted it to me. So it was like this like busted ass staticky Gemini mixer, like the faders were all beat. There'd be like static if you were scratching.
But passed down to the guy that dropped that 97.
Yeah. To me, it was like, you know, hip hop history to get to hold that. And then throughout like college, and then when I graduated, I got a little bit of graduation money, and I bought some like more proper DJ equipment.
What was your first gig? Like, where did you play out the first time?
So there's two very memorable, my first two gigs. I think it's better to mention both of them than just one. The first one was, to backtrack.
I'll tell you mine.
Yeah. Oh, I look forward to it. So the reason why I bought turntables, it wasn't to like be a DJ who played out. It was because there was so much cool stuff coming out on vinyl.
Sure.
A lot of cool like vinyl only releases, independent hip hop 12 inches, vinyl only B-sides, white label bootleg pressings. And I just, once I realized that like there was a lot of great music,
Dope shit was on vinyl.
beyond just what was available on CD and mixtapes, I was like, oh shit, I want to be able to buy that.
And back then, the path to like early access to the music also was on
Yeah,
vinyl.
sometimes you get shit early on vinyl. There was like numerous reasons why if you were like a big music nerd, you would want turntables, and it wasn't necessarily to be like a full-on DJ. In fact, when I bought turntables, I never once considered making a penny off of having them.
Yeah.
I never considered really rocking a party. I just wanted to buy these cool records and make kind of mixtapes for myself to listen to. I didn't even think about like putting out mixtapes for other people to listen to. So the stuff I was buying was like, you know, Raucous Records 12-inch releases like Mos Def and Shabam Sadiq and you know, Fondulum Records and like early Stones Throw.
Lyricist Lounge.
Yeah, totally. I remember the Body Rock 12-inch when it came out with like Mos Def, Tash, and Q-Tip, and it was like, what? This is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, with the artwork too.
What was that Nate Dogg song?
Oh, that was the Lyricist Lounge too. Oh no. Yeah, with Pharaoh.
Pharaoh Monch.
Yeah, and Mos Def. That wasn't. I was in college by the time that came out, but yeah. So then my buddy, the same guy actually whose daughter I kind of dissuaded from CU, he was having he played soccer, and they were having some like soccer fundraiser, and they like booked me to DJ. I don't even know if I got paid. Probably I didn't. But like I'm there, and I have all these like songs that I'm obsessed with, like, oh, this is the new hot shit. And I remember like literally like that Body Rock 12-inch was like, had been out for maybe a couple of weeks. And it was like in my life, in my world, that was like the hottest shit out. And I remember playing it at that, and no one cared. No one cared about anything I was playing at that because I was playing all this obscure stuff.
Yeah.
And it was
Deep cuts.
Yeah, and it was like a high school soccer fundraiser. In fact, the only song I played the whole night that got any response was that Def Squad remake of Rapper's Delight. And I was like, okay, whatever. You know, I didn't really think anything of it because I wasn't trying to be a professional DJ, and it was just a random thing. Then a year or so later, I went to a college party that PD was DJing, and it was like girls dancing. You know, I'm a high school kid at a college party, so I'm already turned out because of that. Mm-hmm. There's like people dancing, but more importantly, girls dancing. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wait, you can get paid to make girls dance to a Tribe Called Quest? Like, I want to do this kind of DJing.
I want to do this.
Yeah, like this is a whole nother, you know, because it's, and once again, it's very much like a sign of the times, but if you were under 18 or even under 21, back in the day, you didn't really see DJs except for in like music videos. Mm-hmm. It's not like now where you see like 11-year-old kids with turntables. This
explosion,
yeah, all over the internet and stuff. There was like, even though the internet was out, it was still like, DJs were kind of like these mysterious wizards. You would hear people like talk like, oh yeah, so-and-so's big cousin has turntables. And be like, oh, whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And like, you would go to the record store and you would see records, but you know, DJs were kind of few and far between. And there was like a mystique about it that's like very much long gone. I mean, that's, you know, now like being a DJ is like a joke. Like, oh, your daughter's dating a DJ? Watch out, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah,
you know, it's crazy how big of a change there's been in that like 25 years or so. But then, yeah, so I started buying more like hit records, like pop stuff that I would have never considered buying like a year or two before because I wanted to like rock
but
parties.
The pop stuff you liked?
Generally speaking, but also other ones.
Yeah.
Knowing that like, you know, I didn't verbalize it as this back in the day, but like there's kind of two kinds of DJing, I think. There's DJing where you're kind of having a conversation with people and kind of like working around the edges. There's like surprises and, you know, a more open-minded kind of crowd. And then there's DJing, which is about kind of controlling the crowd. Yeah. And kind of just like spoon feeding them the hits that they know and like controlling them versus having a conversation with them.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really think of it this way at the time, but basically I was like focusing on like, okay, like how do I control the crowd? Like how do I play the hits, have the crazy sing-along parts, have them going crazy when I drop, you know,
whatever,
Michael Jackson, Billie Jean or whatever, you know, classics or just like the big hits. And so then like I don't know, maybe a year or two passed. I was still buying cool like indie stuff for my own listening and the nerd in me, but I was also buying these like pop records for like potential future party rocking and like getting more exposed to like house parties and clubs when I would go visit PD in Boulder. And then also led to me like going to some of Jones's gigs, like being the underage dude carrying the crates for the DJ, which is like very classic DJ trope that, you know, led to me like being 17 years old, like the first time I went to a 21 plus nightclub, like clearly underage, but like you're carrying crates, like no one's gonna ID you when you're carrying crates and you follow the DJ in, at least, you know, not in general. Yeah. And so I would kind of study that. And then I think it was my senior year of high school. I was digging for records at this place called Mole Records, which was like this tiny little record store, really cool record store in Colorado Springs. And this kid came up to me and he's like, oh, you're a DJ? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a DJ, you know, in a way that had a lot more hubris than like I would probably have had even now. The way that I was like, yeah, I'm a DJ. Yeah. And he's like, oh, my school, we're looking for a DJ. Like, you know, can we get your number? We want to potentially book you. And I'm like, sure. So I get booked for this school dance. Yeah. Some school I never heard of, which is weird because you kind of know with the other high schools, right? Sure. Well, it turns out this was like an alternative delinquent school. And that's why I never heard of it. Yeah. So I go and it was actually the day of my like senior skip day of high school. And I'm DJing this party and I'm like, one of my buddies went with me and I was like, man, like, you know, I've been watching all this party rocking stuff. I've been collecting all these records. Like, I'm gonna smash. And of course, like the staff was like, no curse words, you know, none of that. And so I go and I'm like doing all the stuff that I like learned from like watching PD and watching Chones a little bit and just absorbing more of the culture. And you know, the standard for a school DJ back then was like quite low. You know, it was usually some like old dude playing like one song after another on CD, not really in touch with what the kids like. And I more or less like crushed that gig.
Yeah.
And I vividly remember this part where, you know, that Limp Bizkit song with Method Man and DJ Premier? And it's like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And I learned to like cut out the music, and the crowd would sing along from like watching older DJs.
Sure.
And so I did that, and I remember the staff like running up to me like, we told you no dirty words, like you're supposed to play clean music. And I'm like, I am, but the crowd is singing because they know
the lyrics.
Yeah, they know the unedited version, and I'm cutting it out, so it looks like I'm fucking up at my gig. And I'm like, no, it's the clean version, look. And then, yeah, and I do remember after it was really funny because these girls were like, oh yeah, what are y'all doing after? And they were like, they had kind of like a rough vibe, and I remember me and my buddy were like, we got to go to our senior skip, sorry, and like rushed out. And we didn't even go, but we're like, I don't know, the vibe here just feels just a little off.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that I feel like really rocked a party. And like, you know, that was very much like learning from that first gig, and then like learning from watching like older DJs and spending time like curating records. And but yeah, it was a super fun gig. And then shortly after that, I went away to college in Boulder, started doing more house parties, and then that led to some residencies. And you know, kind of like the classic like DJ come up, right? Is you do house parties for next to nothing.
Origin story.
Yeah, then you do like house parties and make a little bit of money, and then you know you would do some like, you know, I was never a fan of like Greek culture, but like frat and sorority parties you would do because they were the kids in college that had money to book DJs.
DJ, yeah.
And then you would do like opening sets for older DJs, and then you would get like a residency. And so I went through like kind of that whole process, very much in like the top 40 world. You know, now you say open format, but back then we used to mainly say top 40.
Yeah.
Which in a lot of ways was really a code because like hip hop was so like dominant on the radio that you would play like 90% hip hop, and then you would throw in like Britney Spears and Michael Jackson and Prince and a handful of those records, and you could bill yourself as top 40 so that venues wouldn't get scared of hip hop. Even though like since hip hop was such a dominant pop force at that era, you would still mainly play hip hop and R&B records all night long. But you know, and you know, looking back on it, I'm sure like being white didn't hurt. Because if a black person probably played those same records, they would be getting treated, I think, very differently. You know, like, you know, you come from nightlife, like, you know, you're a very open-minded guy, but like historically, like, and even still today, there's more racism in nightlife than like most parts of society. More racism and sexism that are allowed like on the day-to-day basis in nightlife than damn near any other facet of culture today. I would say still.
You know, that's not the whole reason, but some of why I kind of stepped away from the nightclub world is just because of how that it just kept coming up in different ways, and I was like, you know what?
Yeah, I mean,
ice cream.
It's very off-putting, and you know, there would be times when like as a white guy, people would say some racist shit to me, thinking that it was cool because I was white, and it would be very offensive to me. Like they'd say shit like a group of black people come in, they're like, oh, it's getting dark in here. Can you switch up the music? You'd be like, what the fuck? Like,
what the fuck you talking about?
Yeah, like you might as well just say the N-word. Like you mean to say the N-word.
Yeah.
And like,
You're
you
being
know.
slick.
Yeah. And you think because I'm white that I'm gonna accept that, and like it's offensive to me too. It's offensive, to hear it, and then it's offensive that you think I would be like down with this.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like when you're younger, you're kind of like a little bit more, there's more of a scarcity mind state with gigs. And so you would find yourself in some of those gigs. But like, you know, as I've gotten like more established, it's like zero tolerance for any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
None of that malarkey.
Yeah, it didn't take long for me to be like, oh, I can't fuck with these people. I can't fuck with those people. Like, oh, these people have that reputation. Like, I can't be there.
And then there's also like a gatekeeping that happens at some of the top venues because of that, right?
Yeah. I mean, once again, like more racism and sexism is accepted in nightlife than damn near any other facet of modern day society. Yeah. And people often, you know, don't trip or like will freely say racist and sexist things, and like like some of it's very absurd, and like I'm trying to like avoid that at all costs. But yeah, man, like specifically when I was younger, and probably part of it was because I was younger, like early 20s, like they're going to talk to you a little bit differently than they are, you know, if you're in your 30s or 40s, thinking that like, oh, this kid, I can talk to them however, but maybe they wouldn't do that if you're a little bit older, you know?
So even though, we'll fast forward a little bit, you're playing out, you're getting established, and even though we're both from Colorado, we didn't cross paths until I want to say we were both playing the Stray Cat in Phoenix, Arizona. You were on tour with someone from Hyro, or maybe all Hyro. I can't remember.
Well, I was DJing for a group called Tanya Morgan.
Yeah.
Very, very dope rap group. Highly recommend y'all check out Tanya Morgan. And we were on tour with Hieroglyphics. We went on like a 6-week run all across the country.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a Phoenix stop. It was this super random kind of venue. It was in like a strip mall. It was one of the weirder venues that we played on that whole tour.
It was a weird place.
It felt like a
They had what their thing was. It was kind of more of a punk place.
I was gonna say it had that kind of vibe.
But it was on Tuesdays they did live hip hop, and they did like $2 Eucalypts or maybe like a wristband, but it was like really cheap drinks. And so it was like an easy thing to promote.
Yeah. So, that tour was amazing, and I'm forever grateful to the guys from Tanya Morgan for dragging me along on that. And, I got to see so much of the country. I got to see like so many cool venues, so many places. My first time going to Canada was on that tour. But yeah, that's where we first crossed paths.
And did you do other tours? Or was that just
that was the biggest one though.
Yeah.
It's hard, the guys from Hieroglyphics are very much like experts at being on the road. Like they're as independent as it comes. Tajay is like an independent business mastermind. We had some really cool talks on that tour. Like I learned a lot from those guys and like their approach to things. And, they started out, of course, like Souls of Mischief on Jive Records in the early 90s. But then even by, I think, 1997, they had started, doing things independently, kind of getting
those
burned by
guys
that
are like
system.
masterful at marketing
Yeah.
and strategy, and like it's almost like you would watch them get really big, but like they would slow it down, and they've managed to maintain this level of relevance that's lasted 20 plus years.
Yeah, one of the comments that I remember making after that tour was like, the guys from Hyro get older, but their fan base still is like young people too, and like, it's basically like they got older, and a lot of times I think like if you're an act, your fan base kind of ages along with you. They somehow figured out a way that like part of their fan base aged with them, and they were constantly like introducing their music to new young folks too, like college age kids. But yeah, it was really crazy because that tour was the 10-year anniversary, I believe, of a tour that I saw at the Fox Theater in Boulder as a high school kid. So it was very trippy to be like, oh man, this is, to be like 10 years ago, I was like a kid attending this tour. Now, a decade later, like I'm on the anniversary tour with them.
I had a moment like that. I was still touring and doing rap stuff, and I had befriended a lot of people and done a bunch of things and bounced all over the place, Europe and the US and stuff. And randomly, I think Dibs, is a friend, and he was LP's tour DJ, and I had crossed paths LP a bunch, and I think when right before LP went and started Run the Jewels and all that, he put out that one album.
Yeah, Fantastic Damage.
Yeah. No, not Fantastic.
Oh,
Damage.
the one after that.
The one with the Phoenix on it.
Oh yeah. I know the one you're talking about.
I forget the name of the album.
I forget the name of it too.
They were supporting that album. That
it was the follow-up to it.
That was the last release he put out from Def Jux. Anyway, long story short, like I remember going to the show with those guys, hanging out, and then being on the tour bus and like kicking game and like really.
Yeah, those full circle moments like are amazing. Like, when I'm living my best life, I'm constantly reminding myself like, man, like teenage you wouldn't believe the stuff that you do on a regular basis. Like the me that bought turntables with like no intention of being a professional DJ would like never believe that like, I went on the road with Hieroglyphics, or that like DJ Revolution is the homie that I can like call up and he'll answer and we go to lunch, or some of these people that like I looked up to as a kid have become friends or colleagues or acquaintances or whatever. And it is good, I think, to try to keep that in mind. Like once again, like when I'm living my best life, I'm like constantly reminding myself like young me wouldn't believe the shit I'm doing. Like, and it's easy to get jaded or burnt out or frustrated, like doing, living kind of an unconventional lifestyle and like the ups and downs that come along with it. But man, just reminding yourself of like, this is stuff I couldn't have even, like, not only would I like I wouldn't have even dreamed of it because it seemed like so far out of reach that it wasn't even like an option. Yeah. Let alone like actually like a thing to dream on. It was like even bigger than that, it felt like. So yeah, it is a good reminder, and it is crazy that like if you if you're passionate enough about something and you're willing to take those risks, like you can, achieve stuff that young you might have never even fathomed.
So I remember getting with you on tour, and like we would start touching bases. I moved back to Denver at some point, and one of the things that was compelling to me, and it makes sense now, I started seeing you sort of curate parties that were specialized to what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
You didn't want to rock with like the racist club owner or the spot that wanted more Britney Spears than whatever. What inspired you to go down that road of like, you know what, I'm not going to play their game. I'm going to create my own universe.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I don't know that I was that ambitious, like thinking like, oh, I'm going to create my own universe.
Sure.
It definitely wasn't that. The first thing that like really inspired me was like shortly after I turned 21, or even before I turned 21, Chones had Radio Bum's record pool. And you would go to the record pool and you would pick up records every 2 weeks. It was like the labels would send out these boxes of promo records. You would get stuff that like you couldn't get otherwise. It would be like a good value. You would pay like a monthly subscription kind of fee / dues. And then I would hear these other DJs talking about So What. So What is a Denver institution. It's a party that's been going on since 1993, I want to say.
Okay.
Started by K&E. A Denver great, institution, DJ K&E. And over the years, there's been a few different iterations, but actually there's been more than a few different iterations. But they used to throw it at a place called Rock Island on Tuesdays.
Yeah, I remember Rock Island.
And I remember hearing all the DJs talk about all the DJs used to like to go and hang out there. And I remember like vividly the first time I walked, it was in the basement of this place called Rock Island. And I remember walking down these stairs and just completely feeling like, oh man, I've never seen this. Like it was a very like left of center party. They were playing like music that wasn't like the pop hits. They were playing like some music that was like, like funky, soulful, housey stuff from Africa, very progressive and underground hip hop. Just like the way wider scope of music than what I had ever, that's way bigger than I had ever seen people dance to. And I remember instantly thinking like, oh man, like I want to be down with this. And like, I want to figure out how I can play music that's different and have people dance to it. Because like prior to that, I had kind of only experienced the more kind of like pandery, like controlling the crowd kind of DJing, not the taking chances and open-minded dance community kind of DJing. So I like instantly went home and I made a demo and I tried to get my foot in the door over there. That they
you saw what you wanted.
Yeah, and it was K&E, Big Styles, who used to go by Styles and Fashion at the time, and then Peter Black, aka Aztec. And the thing about it was like I made a demo and I was like trying to get my foot in the door over there, but they weren't really looking for a fourth DJ because 3 DJs was kind of plenty.
Yeah.
But that very much inspired me to like think about like things being bigger than just like regurgitating the hits.
Yeah.
Then a little bit after that, I had a residency at this place called Hush.
Okay.
It was a kind of a grown folks. I don't like the phrase grown and sexy, but they were definitely trying to be like a grown and sexy kind of club. And they had achieved it.
It was a dope lounge.
Yeah, it was cool. They were targeting, it was funny because I was in my early 20s, but they were targeting like a 30-ish year old, like, target audience. And it was like very interesting to play there. And it was fun and it was cool, but it wasn't like my people. And at the time I was also kicking it all the time and really close with the late great Sound Supreme. May he rest well. And whenever I couldn't do nights there for, because I was either out of town or doing another gig or whatever, I would have him fill in for me. There was this one winter, I don't know if you remember this, where it snowed like damn near every weekend for the entire, it was like probably like, well, it was winter of 2006, 2007. And I was doing a Thursday and Friday there. The Thursday got slower, being like a weekday, and snow is like definitely like one of the, bad weather is one of the most surefire ways to like slow down a club night, if not kill it. And I remember the manager at the time was like, hey, like Thursday's been really slow. Like if you have any ideas, like we're trying to figure out how to like reinvigorate it. Like let me know, next week when you come in. And then I show up the next week. I had like all these ideas that I wanted to pitch to him. And before I could say anything, he was like, hey, like, we love what you do, but we're going to bring an outside promoter who's going to do an 80s night with his own DJ. So I was more or less fired
Yeah.
from Thursday in a very polite way, and
Yeah.
it was nothing personal. But I was really mad.
Yeah.
I was like, don't tell me that you like me and you want me to still work here as you're firing me when I come up with all these ideas and you don't even hear me out.
Yeah.
It really pissed me off.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had a few years prior like thrown some of my own events in Boulder, and there was a guy named Phil Galaviz. You probably know Phil, also a Denver institution, and he at the time he knew of me from some other club stuff I did and some parties I threw in Boulder. We had a really good relationship, and I decided like, hey, fuck this place. I'm gonna start my own night, and basically knowing that Sound Supreme was going to be the first guy they hit up if I left, and us being like, you know, damn near best friends at the time, I was like, hey, like, I called him up and I'm like, hey, Sound Supreme, like, you want to start a night together? And he was like super on board.
Yeah.
So we decided, fuck it, we're going to start our own night. I called up Phil. Phil was super on board. At the time, he had kind of your previous job. He was managing the Shelter, which later became Bar Standard.
Milk,
and
yeah.
so, yeah, and in the Milk Bar was the first place where we launched The Solution, which was like, you know, my first like successful like party of my own vibe. You know, I'd thrown other events in Boulder that were like top 40 parties that were pretty successful. But this was my first like time doing like what I wanted musically.
And Milk has like a special aura to it.
It has that kind of vibe.
Lends itself to like being left of center.
It's in a basement. It's got a quirky vibe. It's painted in a really interesting way. You know, it's not the main room, so there's not the pressure of like needing to maybe pander to a large amount of people. And and so Sound Supreme, like we're trying to come up with names, and he came up with the name The Solution. And basically, like it stems from us doing gigs that were like quote unquote like cool gigs, but they weren't the kind of gigs that we would want to go to, not places that we want to hang out with, not the kind of places where we would want to invite our friends to come hang out. And so it was literally like our solution to not loving the club gigs that we were doing.
Yeah.
And so we launched The Solution. We teamed up with this place called The 400, which was like a really ahead of their time shoe store / design / marketing firm.
Yep.
That used to be on Bannock, just like a couple blocks away from the Shelter. And we did like an after party. They used to do like a First Friday art show, and we did like an after party for that. And that first one like really cracked off. And we were like, oh cool, like we got a thing. And like, you know, there were definitely like ups and downs, particularly in those early times. But we had a lot of like high points in that time, and you know, more than enough to like let us know like, hey, like this is something that's viable. Like we can do our own thing. Like the third party we ever did over there, we teamed up with Stone's Throw, and we did like a Dilla tribute. It was like the year after Jay Dilla had passed away. So like they sent out a whole bunch of stuff, and that night really cracked off. I mean, and looking back, maybe it didn't crack off crazy numbers wise, but it felt very successful to us. Like maybe 100 people came out.
The energy was right.
To a small room, and 100 people in a small room feels cracking. And yeah, and it felt very promising. And like I said, there were a lot of ups and downs. Specifically, the biggest down was like as we got into summer that year, everything was like really ramping up. Everything was feeling really good. We had done some events on that rooftop at the Shelter, and then they shut it down to renovate it to turn it into Bar Standard.
Yeah.
And the party was like homeless for probably like a month and a half. And we're like, fuck, like we had all this momentum and now it's gone. And you know, like one of the things about being like a full-time DJ for a long period of time is like going through some of those dry spells, like when like there's like a smaller than average amount of venues on the market, you know, like, and that was a time when it just felt like there were less venues, and like we didn't have the relationships needed to like move it right away. And eventually we like sorted it out to move the party to the Funky Buddha. And I remember going to, there was Rock the Bells, and then wasn't there like a sister?
Paid dues?
Yeah, I think we went to Paid Dues.
The one at Mercy's as
Sister
well?
Festival. Yeah, I believe so, with the Guerrilla Union guys. And we like printed out all these flyers. We were like super on our like hand-to-hand promo game. Like we already had a bit of a following from that first run. And then we moved to Funky Buddha, and like it was just like hit the ground running. It was like a huge success. And you know, it was, I would say, like kind of like the first golden era of The Solution, where like it was just like cracking, like, you know, pretty much like week after week. It was like reliable. We did a lot of crazy stuff over there, like really creative stuff.
Funky Buddha was a really dope
It
venue.
was a really dope venue. It got so cracking. Like we were on the rooftop. They used to have DJs on 2 different levels, on the main floor and the rooftop. We got it so cracking, and I feel bad in retrospect because I didn't really think anything of it at the time. But they actually like fired the downstairs DJs and just pumped our music downstairs.
Just piped it?
Yeah. Looking back, I'm like, oh, that's so shitty for those guys. They didn't do anything wrong.
Trying to save money.
Yeah. It was just like some typical like cost-cutting behavior from a nightclub.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like we didn't get paid anything extra for that.
You need the pipe down.
Yeah. We didn't benefit from being so cracked because we weren't charging the cover at that time. We didn't benefit from being so good that we got both floors.
Yeah.
They benefited. They just cut their DJ rates by
$500
half
less or whatever.
Yeah, it all went to the owner's pockets, which is some like typical club shit. But anyways, we were over there for a long time, and over there we got like named best hip hop night in Denver, and I don't really. Those accolades are kind of silly in retrospect, but at the time, like we were like really
And that's
stoked.
something. You guys worked for something. You created something special.
Well, and it just felt, and it felt good at the time. Like, over the years, like I've come to realize like a lot of those awards are kind of BS. And,
Sure.
A lot of the people that hand out the awards aren't really of the culture.
But the first one.
The first one feels very special. Yeah. And I have no idea where that award is. But yeah, it was like a very special thing. And then eventually we like moved the party over back to Bar Standard on that main floor, which wasn't really the right fit for us, but we did throw some pretty crazy events over there. One of them was like a Dilla party with Slum Village. I got to DJ for Slum Village.
That's tight.
And the video is no longer on YouTube, but there's a video of me like drunk, just like grinning ear to ear while I'm DJ for them, like looking like some kid who like is like the Make-A-Wish Foundation or something, just like as happy as can be, just DJing for them. And a lot of fun memories over there. Where did the Goodness come into play? So Goodness, so a couple years after that, I had moved. It's funny actually, it wasn't like the Solution, like the regular version of the party. I had this spin-off idea called the Solution Showcase, which was basically like a live performance spin-off of the party. Once I discovered the Meadowlark in, I don't know, early 2010s, I was like, oh, this place has a lot of flavor. Like it's in this kind of like, now it's called Rhino, but at that time, their jazz night is why I have a daughter. Yeah. Oh wow. We went there and we're feeling the jazz that night. Yeah. We're really feeling the jazz. There's definitely a dirty joke to be added there somewhere. But anyways, one of my friends was like bartending over there. She was like, you should come check it out. I saw it and I was like, oh, this place is like really cool. At the time they were doing like singer-songwriter stuff. It'd be just like some dude strumming a guitar for like 8 people or something. And we're like, hey, like, want to do this, want to move this party over here. At the time they had too much stuff going on. They couldn't really accommodate it. And I was like, well, what if we do like a once a month like show kind of thing? And that was something that was called the Solution Showcase. Since then we did like 20 of them. But, my concept for that was like, I'd bring out like, generally a rap group, I'd feature a producer, and then I'd feature like a local rapper, and then DJs as well. And so did a few of those over at the Meadowlark, and then I had this idea, they have a cool little patio over there, and I was like, I really want to do a day party. And so I created this day party called Goodness. A few different... Which I feel like the Goodness is key because you were already successful with the Solution. You guys are already doing dope shit all over. But the Goodness, it brought out a yet another segment of people and vibe. And well, part of it is because it was a Sunday day party. So a lot of our friends were like industry people who, DJs or bartenders or just bar staff in general, who on a Friday night, they couldn't come out. They were working. And so, and a lot of those people have like better than average taste in music, and they're like quirkier, more fun people than an average person. And so, pretty quickly, so like the first Goodness, I remember it was me, Amen, and KDJ Above. Amen and KDJ Above, 2 of my all-time favorite Denver DJs, or just DJs in general. They'd be dope for anywhere. They don't really need the Denver qualifier. And it was decent. It was like a weird weather day. And then I remember from the jump, I had 2 specific things I wanted to do. One of which was I wanted to serve aguas frescas as like a mixer for alcohol. I always loved the drink, it's a Mexican fruit drink, agua fresca. And I always was like, man, this would be such a good like mixer. But like generally speaking, from my experiences in like Mexican and Latino culture, because you find them a lot in like Latin America and South America as well, people don't use it as a mixer, but I was always like, man, like this would be so good to kind of just spike this. Tequila or whatever. Feels like summer. it's a fruity fun drink, and I wanted to do that. And then I had this other idea. I wanted to make basically like alcohol popsicles.
Yeah.
So we made these like Red Bull and vodka bomber pops, and it's really funny because like in my head they were both like very viable ideas. The popsicles lasted for one party. The Aguas Frescas are still to this day
Still
like
rocking.
the trademark drink of the party. So it's funny how like, you know, in retrospect, one of them like clearly was a better idea, but at the time they were both like in my head like neck and neck for like, oh, these are both gonna set it off.
I did for like 3 or 4 parties. I teamed up with, I can't remember who, probably Red Bull.
Yeah.
But I called it the Saturday Slush.
Yeah.
And we made this whole dope slushy thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And we
I think I remember
liquor
that.
infused slushy
Yeah.
parties for a while. It was fun.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the idea of like trying to do different stuff and like taking different influences and like trying to flip them in a different way. I don't know if that's like a hip hop thing.
What I'm learning about you from your story, it's interesting to me, is it seems like you're always absorbing new and interesting ways to approach things.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you have the time to like sit down with some of the veterans that you come in contact with, from what I would assume from any field, you're very like you absorb it, right? Like
Yeah.
one of the things you pointed out was the conversation you had with the guys from Hyro and some of their marketing prowess, and then I fast forward to like how you've been consistent with the goodness and the solution marketing stuff, and it's like very on track to like you really absorbing information.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a very curious person. I would say, you know, if I have one, I'm trying to think, if I have one like defining trait, I would say kind of endless curiosity might be that.
Yeah.
Like I'm constantly
sharing that.
Yeah, totally. We've had some really like deep discussions about it, and I always want to know more. I want to learn, you know, damn near everything about anything, and especially if it's something that I'm interested in. Like I just want to go as deep down the rabbit hole as I can go, and I also have a bit of this. Not even a bit of it. I have probably a lot of this, and it's a gift and a curse. This like classic hip hop, like be original mentality, like do your own thing, like have your influences, but then like synthesize those into something new. Don't just like see what somebody else is doing and then steal that or try to copy it. And like, you know, that concept is very, I think, dated in today's world. We live in more of like a Mr. Me Too era than ever before, I think. You know, people see something on the internet and they
so
instantly
quick.
copy
like
it.
They can take it so quick.
Totally, yeah.
Like how hard was it for you to get records early on? How hard was it for you to get whatever style interest you had perfected?
You had to pay those dues and invest the time. Yeah.
Like now they can piece together whatever they're trying to do and go get it. Order it, Amazon. it's at
Almost
their door.
instantly. Yeah. And we very much live in that culture, and like, you know, at this point, and I mean, it's been a long time that it's been like this now. Like, there's no shame in biting. You know what I mean?
No.
Like, you know, like, and I like Young Thug, but I remember like when Young Thug came out and everybody was like, oh, this guy just sounds like Lil Wayne. And then like, at one point you would be like laughed out of hip hop for that. And instead like Young Thug went on to become like a modern day great of his own, despite like clearly like mimicking what Lil Wayne was doing.
Initially,
And he developed a bit of his own sound, but you know, there was a time when like, you know, there's a sign at the door, no biting allowed is like one of the most like classic hip hop lines ever from the symphony. So, so I always wanted to try to approach things in a little bit different way. And like, also I think that's like a sign of respect to the people that influence you. Like if somebody influences you, the right way to take that influence isn't to like copy them to a T. It's to take like some like inspiration from that and then put your own twist on it. You know what I mean? It's the difference between like, you know, DJ Premier or Dilla or somebody chopping up a sample versus somebody just rapping over a hit song from 20 years prior.
Yeah.
And like, you know, there's both of those can work, but to me, one of them has a little bit more value because it's bringing
One's
something.
honoring it a little bit.
Yeah, and one's bringing something new into the world, and one's kind of rehashing something else.
Yeah, I mean, both variations work, but the one honors it. With the goodness and the solution, but with the goodness specifically, recent years you've kind of taken it on the road. And, and what's that been like, and how has it been received?
Yeah. So real quick, I hate to do this, but I have to do this because this is such a big goodness thing. It is called goodness and not the goodness.
Yeah.
It's a frequent thing that happens. But it's called goodness. Early on, I used to do different different kind of concept ones where I'd put like a different adjective in front of goodness. And so it was never the goodness, but I mean, that is a thing that people often say. And since the other party's called The Solution, it's a pain in the ass in that way for people to keep it separate. Anyways, so yeah, taking goodness on the road has been really interesting. Everyone is kind of a case-by-case scenario, right? Like, I've taken the party now, it's probably 10 or so different cities. Nowhere is quite like Denver, of course. Denver is like the home of the party. Some of them have been like really, really good. They've all shown promise in different ways, right? But like turnout-wise, they've like kind of been all across the board. They all have, you know, I guess my biggest point of pride on it is that they all have the right vibe.
Yeah.
Like they all have a spirit of like music discovery, of people like taking chances, of people like going there because they love music and because they want to hear some different stuff. I've been able to book like some of my favorite DJs from all over at the different parties. There have been a couple. The first one that comes to mind is like the last Houston one. It was like a rainy day down there.
Yeah.
And rain in Houston, especially like since they've had a lot of like recent flooding, can like bring everything to like a screeching halt.
Yeah, it's like snow for us.
Yeah, totally. And like that one was a bummer. I hate to say it. It was like a fun day for us, but the turnout was not good when it, you know, and also a rainy patio party is not the move.
Not the vibe.
Especially like if you don't have that strong of a reputation in that city. The prior one I did in Houston was really good. But
what I really like about this is thinking about you walking into So What at Rock Island so many years ago.
Yeah.
And having this profound moment or this realization that like, yo, I can be left of center.
Yeah.
And still do what I want. And in this day and age where everything is kind of shifted to like a whole different genre, electronic music, and it's all kind of the same, to take a party like Goodness and share that left of center that you originally experienced.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing, and it's probably more necessary than ever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's more or less necessary than ever. I mean, you know, that's a great compliment. I don't know if that's the case or not. But I do think, you know, carrying on that spirit of doing some left of center stuff. And years later, I became a part of So What. I'm a part of So What right now.
Yeah.
As like
that's even cool. Another cool
like full circle moment for sure. As things have like evolved, but yeah, you know, for me, you know, and when we started The Solution, like the tagline was like all the best in hip hop and more. So like So What started as an acid jazz party. So musically it was very different, but just that spirit of like, you know, being music driven and DJ driven and like taking chances and playing stuff that's a little bit more quality oriented than popularity oriented, I guess I would say, was what I took from that. But then I made it into something that was different, that was what I wanted, which was I was a bit more of like a hip hop and R&B head than I was like an acid jazz head or like a world music head. And so, you know, particularly at that time, like my tastes have evolved a bit, but you know, during that time it was like very much like, oh, we're gonna play, you know, mainly hip hop, all the best in hip hop and more. But yeah, like once again, and that's what I like to do and what I appreciate people doing the most is like everybody's got influences, you know, nothing comes from nowhere, but it is cool to like put your own spin on things. And yeah, you know, I just lead with like, you know, there's a quote from the late Phife Dawg that I have quoted on one of my social media profiles. I forget which one, but it's quality is job one. And like, as long as I create something that I would want to go to that I truly believe in, I think like the rest, if you work hard enough, will like kind of sort itself out. Yeah. Like as long as you're passionate and as long as you believe in a thing, like however weird it is, there's other people that will be drawn to that. And, you know, it may or may not be like that big of a crowd that's drawn to it, but there are going to be other people that are into the same things as you. People. Yeah. And like now because of the internet, things can scale up in all different ways. Like you can find, you know, your people regardless of like what your interest is. It could be anything. Yeah. And so, yeah, over time by just like, you know, taking chances. And I often describe it as like the success of like The Solution and Goodness and, you know, So What as well. And other things I've done is like, it's an accumulation of all the chances I took as a DJ. So like when we started The Solution, there was people that would come out who were the same people who would like come to my top 40 gigs, but would be stoked when I would like slide in some like not obvious stuff. Like the people that would get stoked if I played like a Little Brother song at last call.
Yeah.
Were the same people who like followed me from my top 40 gigs over to the Solution.
Yeah.
And like taking those little chances here and there, like over time it accumulates into something that's substantial. And, you know, I think of that as like, you know, that like faith in my own taste and like trusting my own gut to like do different things. If anything, like that's the defining trait of my DJ career, is like being stubborn enough to be like, well, I think it can work like this. Like, let's fucking figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's not like a surefire way to win. Like, there's ups and downs, and like, you know, I don't want to act like I'm batting 1,000. There's plenty of like failure in my history, but you know, you're an entrepreneur. You know how it works. Like, if you're going to be a good entrepreneur, failure is going to be a big part of that.
The biggest
journey.
part, most important part.
Yeah, it's the part that you learn.
How you recovered that counts.
And yeah, and it's also how you learn. And it's funny because over the years, as I've had more success, like sometimes younger DJs will come talk to me, and a lot of times they have this impression that I'm like some like marketing guru or like productivity guy. And I tell them, and it's a very, I think, unfulfilling answer, but like the secret sauce is like ignorant determination.
Yeah.
Just like,
and quality is job one.
Yeah, and like, hey, if I get knocked down 9 times, I'm gonna get up 10, and like being willing to like, you know, take a punch to the gut or the face or whatever, metaphorically speaking. Yeah, or get your ass beat, you know. And shit, man, it happened last night. I mean, or yesterday. You know, goodness is a day party. You know, we're in mid-April here in Denver. The weather can do all sorts of wacky things. The day started out great. It was like 70 degrees when we started the party. People were showing up in shorts and t-shirts. Yeah. The weather took like a crazy turn, like a couple hours into the party. And by like 7 p.m., it was like crickets. On the feels like, not quite crickets, but it was rough. And it was the thing where it's like, literally we're off to like this great start. The weather turns, like a freezing cold wind kicks up. And yeah, I mean, it was very much like a smack in the face. And it was like a bit of a heartbreaker. And then it's like, come home, and the thought on when I come home is like, all right, what are we gonna do for next time? Like the weather is not gonna be this bad for much longer. Like it was kind of fluky that it got so bad, but like, what are we gonna do next?
Yeah,
like,
how are we gonna do it?
How are we gonna fix it? Like, what can I do to make sure that like I weatherproof the next one, or pay closer attention to the forecast or whatever? And I mean, like, it was just like a really weird, dramatic turn of events, because like, you know, it is pretty rare, even in Colorado, that you start a party and it's 70 degrees and then 3 hours later it's 40 degrees.
And snowing later.
Yeah, and it did. Yeah, you said that it snowed at your house overnight, and yeah, it was.
I woke up to snow. Like I was, because I still drive for Lyft as a way to like decompress, and I was out there lifting, and it was like it was snowing.
Yeah, and it was
clearly snowing.
Yeah, and it was, and now it's funny because like Sunshine. I walked over here today and it's like 60 degrees and sunny, and I'm like, fuck, man, like of all the 15 hours of frigidness. It couldn't happen
one day later.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, you know, Saturday was like 85 degrees and felt like summer. Yeah, and I felt bad. And I even knew it when some people showed up in like shorts and t-shirts and stuff. I was like, oh no, this is not going to end well.
Need that hoodie.
Yeah. I was in like
tied around the waist.
I was in long sleeves and jeans, and then I had a hoodie for later. And I didn't even realize it was going to get cold until right before I walked out the door, and I grabbed a hoodie last minute. And I was like, oh, a lot of these people were just like, oh, it's nice. Yesterday was nice. Yeah. It's goodness time. It's summer patio vibes. And, you know, I dubbed yesterday as goodness spring training. And it very much was that. And like Colorado spring is a vicious thing, you know, like it can be, you know, t-shirt weather and borderline snowy in the same day. And, you know, yesterday was that. So yeah, you know, that resilience is like a really big part of it. And it like, you know, I think it's what screens out people who are like serious about it versus people who are kind of, you know, interested in doing it for a cloud
or
a
season.
Think that it's a quick buck or, you know, yeah, you can tell who's like really in it. Like time really sorts out like who cares the most about it. And yeah, but there's humbling moments all the time. And, you know, like I said, like I'm fresh off of one right now.
All right. Well, we got my guy, Justin.
Yep.
This is the Creative Questions Podcast. Boom.
Yeah. Salute, Tully.
Hell yeah.